Hey guys, I wanted to talk to you about something today. Basically, what I'm going to chat about is how to approach your calories and your macros after you finish a diet. But first, I just want to point out how amazing my shirt is. Gluten is the best. Okay, so I've got a few steps that I think that you should take after you finish a diet, and these are steps that I took myself and that worked out really well for me once I finished my diet. Now, the reason that I was dieting in the first place was for photo shoots. A lot of people may be doing this just to get lean for a certain event or a photo shoot or something similar, or you may be at a stage of your life where you feel like you need to lose weight, but you get to the point where you're on calories that are unsustainable and you need to change them in order to live a more healthy and sustainable life. So what I'm going to do is just go through the steps that I took when I finished my diet, but also that I'd recommend you guys take after your diet as well, to have the best results possible, basically, and to avoid that sort of rebound or, falling back into potential binge eating behaviors and things like that. So the first and most important step is have a plan, okay? Being organized with this sort of thing is going to help so much. Now, if you have a coach, form the plan with your coach, okay? Because that will help a lot. If you're organized and you're planning ahead and you know what calories you're going to be on once you finish your diet, obviously that's going to make planning ahead a lot easier for you. And it's going to mean that you know exactly what you have to do once you've finished the diet or the day that you decide that you are going to finish. So I suppose part of having the plan would be having an end date or having a timeline for the diet initially, and figuring out, whether it's a certain body fat that you want to be at, or whether it's about the way that you look, or whether it's an event, a photo shoot, having that sort of end date to finish on, and making sure that you stick to that and you have that plan for afterwards. So after you diet, a lot of the time you may be finishing on quite low calories, and the sort of typical reverse diet, if you want to call it that, would be to slowly introduce calories after a diet. Now, I don't particularly like this method because essentially you're still going to be in a calorie deficit if you do that, because you're only implementing or introducing small amounts of calories, which means that, you're still going to be in that deficit, and you're probably still going to be experiencing a lot of the things that you were experiencing during your diet, like, low energy levels, a lack of motivation to train. You might be getting tired easily, a bit moody, things like that. And there's no point prolonging that, right? So what I suggest, and what I did both times after the two diets that I've done, is took a fairly large bump in calories afterwards. Now, if you know what your maintenance calories are, you can probably use this as a guide as to where you want to bump your calories to. And if you don't, that's okay. What you can do is move your calories up to a projected maintenance, or a quite conservative maintenance, or what you think would be your maintenance calories for a happy and healthy weight for yourself, and aim for that. Now, your protein isn't going to change very much, so you want that bump in calories to be mainly your carbs and your fats, and those are the things that are going to help with things like energy levels and hormone restoration and those sorts of things. If you know your calories ahead of time as well, that way you can plan your macros ahead. So have that plan ready to go and know exactly what numbers you're going to be hitting after you finish that date of your diet. The second thing is to aim to keep things as similar as possible, okay? You almost want to think of this post-diet area or section as a little extension of your diet, basically, because it is actually just as important to follow your calories and your macros at this point as it is during your diet, because this is going to set you up for your future goals. So if, during your diet you were planning ahead of time, tracking ahead, doing meal prep, you've got your training schedule set, you're eating foods that are quite filling, keep doing that in this post-diet section, or reverse diet, whatever you want to call it, I suppose. Because that's going to make it easier to stick to, because you're already in that routine. And sticking to things and staying motivated with them really isn't about having, like high motivation levels or anything like that. It's all about forming routines and habits and sticking to them, and you've already got them. So if you think about this time as an extension of that diet and do things, really, really similarly to before, you'll find that it'll be easier to stick to. You've got higher calories, so it's going to be easier to stick to anyway, but you're doing the exact same things as before, just with a little bit more food. The third thing that I would recommend is setting goals. So whether those goals are strength related, body composition related, fitness related, health related, it doesn't matter what it is, but set those goals before you move into that reverse diet, because that way you'll have something that you're working towards. I suppose one of the biggest things that people struggle with post-diet is the fact that, I'm not dieting anymore, so I can just eat whatever I want because it doesn't matter anymore. If you set those new goals, you can avoid that sort of rebound thing happening, because you've still got something to work for. You've got a reason behind setting these routines and habits for yourself, and you can continually see, a light, I guess, at the end of the tunnel, that's different to the one that you had before, which would be the event that you were working towards, or whatever it was. But now you have new goals and you've got a new thing to work towards. So definitely be thinking about setting goals, even writing them down on a vision board or something like that to help you remember, or have them, stay in a sort of visual point to help you keep pushing along in that regard. If you were doing a certain amount of cardio, that would be a little bit, I guess, extra or on top of what your usual training would be. Try not to get rid of this straight away, especially if you're doing a lot on top of what you would normally do. The best thing to do here is to taper it down. So if you're doing, say, 5 sessions a week on top of what you'd ideally like to be doing, you could start by, obviously you're going to be increasing your calories, but also slowly reducing the amount of cardio that you're doing. So you could reduce the intensity, you could also reduce the frequency, and you can also reduce the amount of time that you are doing that cardio for. So those are the 3 ways that you can start tapering down your cardio until you get it to a point where you're happy with, or get it down to a point where you're, maybe it's 2 sessions that you want to do per week, and you've got it down to that. Just make sure you're focusing on tapering it rather than completely eliminating it straight away. The 4th thing, or the 5th thing actually, is to keep in mind that all those delicious things that you want to eat, they're still going to be there. I think one of the things that I struggled with post-diet was thinking, oh my gosh, now I can eat all of those things that I've been missing out on, and I wanted to eat them all at once. And I needed to really remind myself, or have someone remind me, I suppose, at that time, that all those things are going to be there all the time, And this sort of takes me to the next point, or number 6, is introduce new things slowly, okay? You do get that sort of feeling of wanting to eat everything at once, but it's not going anywhere, yeah? It's food, you're always gonna have access to it. And if you don't, just obviously fit it into your macros, but you're always gonna have access to it. So just think about, maybe 1 or 2 of the things that you miss the most. Maybe it was having a home cooked meal by your mum, or maybe it was a specific ice cream that was really tough to fit into your macros when you were dieting. And start with those things, and then slowly introduce more flexibility. So obviously higher calorie foods are going to be part of that, but also things like hitting, calories rather than hitting specific macros. So maybe switching it up between carbs and fats rather than having to hit a super specific amount of everything. eating out at restaurants or at other people's houses, and alcohol as well. So these are all things you want to think about introducing quite slowly, and try not to have them, like, you know, introduce them all at once, because if you go hell for leather on those things, you might find that rebound happens easier. So think about, you know, maybe eating very similar foods to what you're eating when you were dieting, but then adding in, you know, something after dinner or a snack in the afternoon, or even just slightly increasing the size of all of those meals to have you staying fuller for longer and having that sort of extra flexibility. And then, yeah, eating out once or twice a week and slowly implementing alcohol every now and then. Obviously, you still want moderation with that, but that was something that you may have missed out on a little bit when you were dieting. So it's definitely advised to think slowly with these things rather than all at once, because that's sort of when you start to get overwhelmed and those rebounds happen. One of the biggest things with working towards building up your calories is thinking about the metabolic advantages that you can get from increasing those calories post-diet. Now, obviously the most important one is getting your calories and your energy levels and your strength back to a normal and sustainable level. Another thing that you want to be thinking about is your hormone restoration. So this is particularly relevant if you've gotten quite lean, and this is something that you want to bring back to, I guess, normalcy. And obviously your gains. This is a time where your body is going to pretty much be like sucking up all of those calories, and if you keep your training schedule very similar to the way it was before you sort of finish your diet, and you stay on track with that sort of thing and not let that slip, you're going to give yourself the best advantage of making the most of those calories and getting the most muscular gains, I guess, out of those calories. You want to be thinking, I want to eat as many calories as possible with gaining as little weight as possible in this post-diet area, okay? So whilst you were dieting, you want to be dieting on as many calories as possible and losing as much weight as possible. This is kind of like the same, but reverse. So as many calories as possible, but gaining as little weight as possible. If you're thinking sort of, you want to be a bit more specific with staying on top of your weight and your measurements and things like that, aim for staying between 5 to 10% of your finishing diet weight in the post 3 to 6 weeks of, you know, increasing your calories. Do all the same things that you were doing when you were dieting, like if you were weighing in weekly and measuring yourself and taking photos. Keep doing all of those things so you stay on top of your progress, okay? These are all things that I've implemented myself to avoid that post-diet rebound, and I feel like I was pretty successful. Now, if you want to give yourself a day off post-diet, then by all means do it. But if you are prone to binge eating, it might be a better idea to have a plan in place for the next day, okay? I hope this helps you guys with your sort of plans post-diet, and if you have any questions, just pop them in the box below and I'd be more than happy to answer them on another video. Thanks, guys.